so glad that you are always present, that you are always near, and that you bring us joy in all things. Lord, I ask that you just be right now here in this service, in the Sunday school class, Lord, and I humbly ask you, Lord, to just let these words that I speak be used by you, Lord God, and that you will just touch somebody, Lord, that may need to hear this, Lord, and I just give you glory and honor and praise in all things. Amen. All right, so I do need a volunteer. Do I have any two volunteers? Oh, come on, you guys. It's not going to be anything bad. I promise. It's going to be super easy. Okay, Randy.
Good choice.
You're not shy. Get up here. You get to look at yourself. What could be more wonderful than that?
No, go ahead. Look at yourself.
All right. When you look in your mirror, what do you see?
Baggy eyes.
No, there's things you can do about those. But anyhow. No. So can you see your past in that mirror?
I know.
Can you see your future in this mirror?
I know.
You just see yourself, baby eyes and all. Okay, you're looking great. Thank you. That's all you needed to do. See? I know. I told you. Not going to cause any harm or grief. A mirror can give us many different ways at looking at ourselves. Right now, back in the Sunday school, we are doing circus games. And a few weeks ago, we did Hall of Mirrors. How many have been into a fun house or whatever with the mirrors that make you look really, really wide or super, super skinny? And they don't really get the best of you, do they? No. It seems like it's always not the most best looking of ourselves. But we can't see our past in mirrors, and we cannot see our future in the mirrors, only what is present and what you see right now. But God sees what is behind us, and only God knows the future. And God knows how He's going to get us there. And as much as all of us would like to see our future, God doesn't give us a way to glimpse that far ahead most of the time. He wants us to trust Him to get to where He is leading us, and we don't need to know the future. I know I mentioned this before. I am a planner. I like things in detail. I'm very detail-oriented. And if you are one of those types of people, it is kind of frustrating when God only shows you what's in front of you, right? Because you've got things planned. Okay, God, this is what I'm doing. And He's like, nope, sorry, detour. And so, but God is the one who knows our future, and we need to learn to trust in Him. So, we are going to talk about the story of Joseph. Now, I am not going to read all of Joseph's story because it's chapters 37 through 50 in Genesis, and you guys would all fall asleep. So, I have props to keep you awake today. And you get to listen to me. So, those of you who don't know the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis, chapter 37 through 50, Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel. And if you don't remember who Joseph's dad was, so Jacob and Esau, remember the twins? And Jacob basically stole Esau's birthright. And because he did that, Esau was mad at him, so he had to run. And Jacob had ended up marrying two women. One he didn't particularly like, but he married her anyhow because she was the oldest. And then Rachel. Rachel was the one that he truly loved. Well, Rachel was barren for many years, and Leah had lots of children with Jacob. But Rachel had Joseph, and then she had Benjamin. So they lived in Canaan at this time, and Joseph, at that time had one full brother, which was Benjamin, and then 10 half-brothers, which were Leah's children, and then a half-sister. Joseph was Rachel's firstborn, Jacob's 11th son. So I cannot imagine having that many boys running around in my house. Those of you who have boys, I was blessed with one boy, and that was good. To have 11 11 of them running around? Yeah, no, not so much. Or 12. 12 would have been actually 12. He was favored by his father for his good character. Joseph was a good kid. And so, well, not just that. I think Jacob favored him because he was Rachel's firstborn son, right? So, I'm sure he was extremely proud because he was the one that he loved, Rachel's, and then it was her firstborn. So Jacob gave him a coat of many colors. And lo and behold, in Sunday school, guess what we had? We have our coat of many colors. Now, I'm not quite sure if it's striped. We always portrayed in Sunday school as being striped. It could have been patchwork like Dolly Parton's coat of many colors, if any one of you for that song. Okay, moving on. My country roots just keep coming out, don't they? In songs you guys have no idea what they are. Okay, you can Google it. I can say that now. It's what I say to my younger people on my staff. Google it if they don't know what I'm talking about. Google the song, Dolly Parton, Coat of Many Colors. So Joseph wore this coat, jacket, so much that, because he was proud of it, right? Because his family, his dad made it for him, and so it was special meaning to him. Joseph's brothers, though, saw that their father loved Joseph more, and so they really didn't like Joseph. Matter of fact, they were at terms of hating Joseph because of all the attention he got. I gotta flip that. That's really annoying. So much that every time they saw Joseph, it doesn't say this in the word, but I can just see them. There's that kid again. It's bad enough if you have a younger brother or sister, that kind of take along. Well, not only was Joseph's favorite, but Joseph also had things that God was revealing to him. So, when he was about 17 years old, he had a couple dreams, and I am going to read from here. This is from Genesis chapter 37. Starts off with verse 5. It says, "One night Joseph had a dream, and when he had told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream," he said. "We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around me and bowed low before mine." His brothers responded, "So, you think you're going to be our king, do you? Do you actually think you're going to reign over us?" I can just hear him, right? Because that's how brothers or sisters are. And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. "Listen, I have another dream." And he said, "The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me." And this time he told the dream to his father as well to his brothers. But his father scolded him. "What kind of dream is that?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you?" But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Now, his father, Jacob, understood dreams because he had a dream back when he was running away from his brother Esau and his dad at that time. And he had a dream of, if you heard of Jacob's ladder, it was the dream where Jacob saw these angels coming up and down. So Jacob was very familiar with dreams and what they could mean. And so that's why he kind of pondered on these, like, okay, something's going on with this kid. I don't maybe like the way he tells these dreams, because some of it might have been, we talked about this, I think, the last time I was up here. I have an employee that was like, "Oh, I can't believe this person, was mad before I even said hi to them. And then when I started talking, they got even madder at me." I says, "What was your tone like? How was your tone with them?" And so I wonder if Joseph's tone could have been a little, boisterous, like, "Look at what because he's just a little twerp. And now you're trying to tell me that, we're going to bow down to you. You think you're so great and awesome. Proverbs 3:5 in the New Living Translation says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Depend not on your own understanding. When God reveals things to us, we don't always understand them, and sometimes we may misinterpret them, right? Or others might. Hebrews 13:5-6, and I'm reading this from the Message because I like the way it's said in the Message. It says, don't be obsessed with getting more material things. Be relaxed with what you have, since God assures us, I will never let you down, never walk off and leave you. We can boldly quote, God is there, ready to help. I'm fearless no matter what. Who or what can get me? So even though Joseph, his brothers probably made his life not very fun. If you have any siblings, you know how they can be in life. Growing up, we pretty much tortured my little brother. Just saying. I had two sisters. My brother's younger than mine. My two sisters are younger than I. And we've got great pleasure in torturing our brother. And so I can kind of feel how Joseph felt, maybe, with having older brothers than him. I'm sure they took advantage of trying to not be very nice to him sometimes. And in our life, things can get bumpy and a bit wonky. The unexpected happens, changes in family life, jobs. God was trying to show Joseph that through these dreams, I got you. I'm going to be there through all the bumps and bruises that comes with life. Trust me, God's plans will never fail. Never. King Solomon would write later in Proverbs 5, which I read before, trust in the Lord with all your heart and depend not on your own understanding. We don't always understand what God has in plan for us. And it may look a little ugly, but he's always there working it out. So as we go further down, the boys were so upset with Joseph and who he was, how he acted, who he thought he was. There was an incident that took place while his brothers were grazing their flocks far away from home, and Jacob sent Joseph to go check on them, which can be a little irritating if you have siblings and your parents send another sibling to go check up on you, see what they're doing, right? So when they saw Joseph coming, they conspired to kill him. That's how much anger and hate they had for this kid. But Reuben, who was the eldest, felt a special responsibility for his younger brother and determined that if possible, he was going to rescue him. So he suggested, because they wanted to kill him as soon as they saw him, he suggested that, there's an empty pit over here, a cistern as they called, and why don't we just throw him in there? Let's just teach him a lesson. We'll keep him under there for a few days. And then Reuben had planned to come back and save his brother, get him out of the pit. But the brothers stripped Joseph of his beautiful coat, and they threw him into the pit. So I'm sure Joseph was like, what are you doing? Hey, guys, what? Funny, let me out. This is you guys, you're cute, but let me out. And they were not going to let him out. And while Reuben was away, Judah suggested that they sell Joseph into slavery to the Ishmaelite merchants. So all the brothers agreed, except Reuben, remember he was away, and agreed and sold him into slavery for 20 shekels of silver. So not only were they able to get rid of their brother, who was a pest, and thought, in their eyes, thought that he was greater than all the rest of them, they made a few bucks off of him too. So the merchants would take Joseph into Egypt. And when they left with their brother, they took the coat that their dad had made for him, and they smeared it with goat's blood and gave it to their father Jacob. And with straight faces, they claimed that a wild beast had devoured him, and their father had believed that Joseph had been killed. And it says that he greatly mourned over his loss. So here are the boys conspiring against their brother, decided not to kill him, but better yet, make a few bucks off of him, sell him into slavery, and then they lied to their father. So these are some great things done against Joseph, and something that you would never forget, right? If this had happened to you. This was something that you would never, ever forgive your siblings for doing this to you. Well, it would come that the merchants would sell Joseph, because they wanted to make their money too, right? So they sent and sold him to an Egyptian named Potiphar, who was a captain of Pharaoh's guard. And Joseph found himself in a strange country, deprived from the position that he held back home as the most favored son, and lowered to a social status of a slave. So he had all his rights taken away from him. But God was still with Joseph, and he would bless him and prosper him, even though he was a slave and the captain of the guard named Potiphar. He was soon appointed as overseer of the house of Potiphar, and the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. So, sometimes we're in situations that we don't always feel comfortable in, that we don't like, that we're in, but know that God is still there, and he's still blessing you. It just may not be the way we think we should be blessed, right? So here's Joseph with his father, greatly favored by his father, made a beautiful coat. His father loved, doted on him. His brothers hated him, decided, let's get rid of him, sell him to gain some money. And then when he got to Egypt, he was sold again to Potiphar, who was a captain's guard. So we're not talking some, mid-level family here. This is someone who was in high esteem. He was captain of the Pharaoh's guard. And so he had a very nice household going on. And because of Joseph acting the way that God wanted him to act, he saw that he was blessed in that position, even though it's not where he wanted it to be. Think about the times, the places, or even now, if you're in a situation that you're thinking, this really bites. This is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to do. This is not the people I want to be around with. I'm pretty sure Joseph really didn't want to be around a bunch of Egyptians, because they are totally opposite of what he grew up with, and believing that there was one God, his name was Jehovah, to a land where they served many gods, right? So this is not where he wanted to be, but yet he continued to live his life so that others would see that he was of good stature and that he was being used in a mighty way, even though he was in a very lowly position. Sadly, Potiphar's wife, it says in Genesis 39, that tried to seduce Joseph, but he rejected her advances by saying this would be a wicked thing and a sin against God. But she was persistent in her efforts, and Potiphar's wife caught Joseph by his garment when she asked him to lie with her. But he left his garment in her hand and fled, because he knew that this was not right. Wrong against God and against his master, Potiphar. So, when he fled, she became very angry that he rejected her and fabricated a false accusation that he attempted to rape her. So Potiphar, even though he probably didn't so much believe his wife, but had to stand by his wife, sent Joseph to prison. So we have to remember, though, the prison that Joseph was sent was not necessarily, it was not good, right? Any prisons back in those days was not good. It was more of a political prison. You still went to jail, into prison, cells, no bathrooms, doing your business in the corner, no baths, showers, whatever. Disgusting. But he was in this place because Potiphar knew that he had to listen to his wife and take action against what was being said. So life throws us curveballs sometimes. Sometimes we get in the head. Sometimes we get hit between the eyes and we get knocked down. But God is there still with us. It reminded me of the song Reckless Love. Hopefully you guys have heard that song. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so good to me. It's overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. But still, you gave yourself away. It's the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. God searches after us, and he looks after us no matter what we're going through. God's love is so overwhelming that he knows things that are going to happen before we even go or get to them. And he is there waiting for us, still there. Potiphar's action in imprisoning Joseph with political offenders may have been considered an extreme leniency to those around him, but Potiphar's leniency would reveal his confidence in Joseph's integrity. But he had to serve the punishment because of his wife. And because of God's grace, Joseph again won the favor of his superiors. If you read Genesis 39, 21 and 23, it says, one day, two high-ranking servants who happened to be also in prison and were in Pharaoh's house had asked Joseph to interpret the dreams that they had. Joseph gave them their interpretations, and which came to pass, one was set free, the other returned to his previous position as a king's cupbearer, but the other was killed. But Joseph had asked the cupbearer, remember me. Remember me. But, of course, as humans that we are, he forgot. We don't always remember the kindness or something that someone has done for us. And for 2 years, Joseph was in prison. 2 years. The king had 2 frightening dreams. It was then, when no one else could interpret these dreams, the cupbearer went, oh yeah, there is this guy in prison that I knew that he was able to interpret my dreams, and I'm here as your cupbearer again. I bet he could help. His name is Joseph. So the king called Joseph, and Joseph narrated his dreams to him. And by the inspiration of God, Joseph gave the interpretation, which revealed that there will be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Then Joseph counseled Pharaoh to prepare for this famine by storing grain during the fruitful years for the years of famine. So now here's Joseph climbing his way back up again, right? So he was doing really good. He was in favor with his dad, got a really nice coat, irritated his brothers. Brothers didn't like him, threw him in a pit, sold him for 20 shekels, got resold to Potiphar. Potiphar's wife was like, I like this kid, but she liked him too much and got him in trouble, and so then he ended up in jail. So now he's in jail with these other 2 guys who have dreams that they wanted to interpret. So he interprets the dreams. The dreams are interpreted. The one guy dies because it was bad news for him. The other one, the cupbearer, was good news, and he got his place back with the king, and now the king had 2 dreams. So Joseph went from here to here to here to here to here, and now he's back way up again. That sound familiar with anyone? Sometimes our lives go that way. It just is. God has never, ever promised that when he is with us, that our life would be a perfect straight line all the time. Neither did he promise that it would always be in the high mountaintops. There's a song that we sing back in the Sunday school. It's by Caleb and somebody or another. Anyhow, it goes. It's that hallelujah feeling, and it starts off, some days I climb a mountain. Some days I touch the clouds. Some days my best friend is the cold, hard ground. And sometimes that's how life is. We are doing really good. We're climbing that mountain. Yeah, this is good. We're touching those clouds. Ooh, this is beautiful. And then the next moment, we're flat on our face. And that's what Joseph had been experiencing. A lot of up and downs. But luckily for him, it wasn't, well, maybe not so lucky. It wasn't like, boop, 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 boop. It was gradual, right? 2 years he was in prison. Maybe more. But 2 years for sure. He was in prison. And not a very nice place to be. Joseph's interpretation of the dream and his advice was so pleasing to Pharaoh and his counselors that the king proposed an appointment to Joseph. Whoa, wait, hold on a second. This guy just got out of prison. And now you're making him something who-to-do-who? What? How'd that happen? Some people don't like it when those things happen. When God moves on you and rescues you from things that have been horrendous in your life, and things that you did that you regretted, and God appoints you to someplace over, there's going to be people who are not going to be happy with you. It just is. But God has appointed you. You better walk in it, sister and brother, because God is using you for a purpose.
Amen.
So, Pharaoh and his counselors said the king proposed to appoint Joseph as minister of food, and he granted him emergency powers. The king elevated Joseph to the highest office under the crown. He went from prison, stinky, smelly, disgusting place, to now being in the second in command. After this new appointment, Joseph got married, had 2 sons named Manasseh and Ephraim. He carried out his role as governor of Egypt, storing up food during the years of plenty to sell to the Egyptians and neighboring nations during the years of famine. Joseph was finally beginning to see, I believe, God's plan. He was finally able to see, oh, that's what he meant. That's what he meant in those dreams. So I wasn't crazy, like his brothers probably made him believe. If God has given you something and you don't see it for a long time, hang on to it. Don't let it go. God's just working out the things to get you where you need to be your most effective. But as great and as wonderful as things are, his past catches up with him. Bad memories would soon appear. Sometimes things that we did, we said, we lied about, tried to cover up, just like Joseph's brothers. Joseph probably thought all of that was behind him now. But when the story of Joseph and his brothers come together is when the famine started. Jacob had sent his 10 brothers to Egypt to buy grain during this famine. But he kept Benjamin, remember Joseph's brother through Rachel, with him. And when the brothers met Joseph in Egypt, because remember his job was to give out all the grain during the famine, he knew them, but they didn't recognize him, because I'm sure he looked very different after all these years. Probably a little, not that little skinny twerp that used to hang around them, telling them foolish stories. But they didn't recognize him, and this was the last place that they would figure they would see him. They probably thought that he maybe really was dead, because, they sold him as a slave, and you didn't really live very long as a slave, especially if you didn't get a good master. To test their character, he charged them of being spies, and he kept them for 3 days. Afterwards, he released all but one of them with grain for their families. But he requested that they bring back the youngest son, Benjamin. Now, if you read through these verses, this is in chapter 42, Joseph questions them about the family. You know, like you're at a table with a bunch of strangers, you go, so, are you married? Have any kids? What's your kids' names? Where do you live? Right? So it was just casual conversation that Joseph was having, trying to get information from his brothers about how his family was doing. So he requested that the youngest come when he found out how many of them there were. Not that he didn't know. But to back up the proof of their original story, that there was 12 sons with one man named Jacob. So at this point, the brothers felt that this mistreatment was payback for what they did to their brother. Even though they didn't recognize him, they're thinking, oh, great. Now we're in this position. Joseph heard what they had discussed, and he left them to weep because it hurt him. It hurt him. He kept Simeon and sent the others back, and also returned their money and their grain sacks. The brothers were terrified when they found the money was in their sacks. And when they returned home, they told Jacob that they would need to bring Benjamin when they ran out of grain. But Jacob was like, no, you're not taking my youngest. He's all I have from Rachel. You're not taking him. But eventually the famine forced Jacob to accept the fact that if they still wanted to eat, he was going to have to send Benjamin back with them. And Judah, remember Judah? He was the one that threw Joseph in the pit. And so now he's having to take Benjamin, the youngest. And he promised his father that he would give his own life for surety for Benjamin's. This time Jacob sent gifts and doubled the money for the grain for them. And when brothers reached Egypt, Joseph commanded his servants to prepare a special meal for his brothers that he may eat with them. Now the brothers then, when they got back, because they don't know what's going on, they explained to Joseph's steward about the money that was placed in their sacks. And Joseph's servant brought Simeon out. And when Joseph came to meet them, guess what happened? All the brothers came down and bowed down before Joseph. That's how awesome God is.
Yeah.
He fulfilled Joseph's dream. Joseph asked about his family and was moved with an emotion when he saw Benjamin, his brother. At the table, the brothers were seated according to their birth order, and Benjamin was given 5 times more food than his brothers. But yet, his brothers were not jealous, and Joseph had seen that they had changed their hearts. So we read on, Joseph again tests his brothers by returning their money in their grain sacks, but this time he placed a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. And when the brothers left, he sent a servant after them this time, accusing them of thieving, and threatened to take whoever had stolen the cup, which of course was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers came back to Joseph, and Judah begged for Benjamin's life, saying, if something happened to Benjamin, their father would surely die. And at that point, Judah, the instigator, offered his own life to save Benjamin. And upon seeing this evidence of love to Benjamin, Joseph knew for sure that his brothers had changed. So he dismissed his servants, wept so loudly that Pharaoh's house heard him, and then he revealed his identity to his brothers. And then they were scared of them being brought to justice of what they had done to Joseph. But Joseph forgave his brothers and told him, even though they betrayed him, Genesis 50:15-21 says, God overruled their evil act for good, and the spirit of his heart was filled with forgiveness, Joseph's heart, and though acquainted by experience with human betrayal, he had never harbored any thoughts of resentment or hatred, or hatred to his brothers. So Joseph sent his brothers back again, and the whole family came back to live with Jacob in the land of Goshen, which by the way, and Pastor has talked about this, is that they got to live in one of the richest parts of Egypt with great anticipation. And Jacob said, it says that Jacob was a bit fearful, but God comforted Jacob and says, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. Thus, before leaving, Jacob received the assurance that God would go with him. This was a long time, you guys, that this happened. This, just like I said earlier, this wasn't just a couple years. It says that Jacob was 130 years old when he arrived at Egypt. Joseph had been 30 years old at the time of his appointment to his office. And then since that time, 7 plentiful years, 2 years of famine. So now Joseph had reached the age of 39. And they figure he was about 17 when he was thrown into the pit. That's a long time to be living in a life, right? But God was with him. And Joseph showed that he trusted God in everything. We learn that although he was treated with evil and malice, he did not abandon God, nor strayed away from his ways. We see that when he refuses Potiphar's wife. He remained faithful to God amidst the most difficult circumstances in a pagan land. His character stood true to principle under pressures of temptations. In his faithfulness, God revealed sincerity and wisdom and determination in adhering to the principle. Stronger the temptation, the more resolute he became. He exhibited full submission to God and his unwavering trust in God's ways. We see that the faithfulness of God to those that honor him. What a drastic change the Lord had brought to life with Joseph. His prison chains would be in exchange for gold chains around his neck. The prisoner's humble clothes for fine linen. His cell, he received a chariot. In his jail, he received a palace. Potiphar's servant, Joseph, had became Potiphar's overseer. Humility goes before honor. Servitude and suffering were the stepping stones to power. And how well was God's faithful servant rewarded for his faithfulness, his integrity, and patience. Sometimes we get impatient, you guys. You think, come on, God, hurry, let's go. Drive-through line. Takes 10 minutes to get through the drive-through lane. You're like, why am I in the drive-through lane? I could have just walked up to the counter and gotten some faster. Because we become impatient. God wants us to be patient. We see through the virtue of the forgiveness when God promoted Joseph to be second command all of Egypt. He showed his forgiveness and kindness to his brothers instead of vengeance for their wickedness. And he declared to his brothers, you meant evil against me, but God made it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many lives. No matter what we go through, God is always there.
Yes.
We've heard it, we know it, but how do we see it when we don't always see what he's doing? So, I thought a little bit about last week or the week before when Pastor was talking about community and church and our family being a church. So, I'm going to ask Nicole, because you tried to volunteer earlier, but Randy beat you too. So, can you come up here and look in the mirror? But when you look in the mirror, will you look this way? So the mirror is behind you. Okay. I gotta make sure. All right, so here's my question. When you look in the mirror, look past yourself, and what do you see behind you? Trish. Who else? Eric. Who else? Pastor. Renee. Dennis. Alicia. Dwayne. Carol. That's your church family. That's who's behind you. When you're looking in the mirror and all you see yourself is that, sorry, I'm blaming anyone. That's who you see.
Beautiful.
You need to look past yourself. Joseph looked past himself and saw what was going to ahead of him this time. But when we're in those situations and we can't see the future, maybe God hasn't delivered that little nugget and said, this is where you're going, then you need to look in the mirror and look to see what's behind you. And you have your church family that's behind you, supporting you, and giving you that oomph that you need. Pastor had kind of summed it up in that if you got read the Facebook page, that loving God is through commitment, life, and honor, like Joseph did. Love community through excellence, reverence, and teamwork, like Joseph did. Love believers through leadership, wisdom, and spirit, like Joseph did. When all is said and done, through God's hand, Joseph became the community both to those he served, led, and took care of, and his family. He reached out and did it all for the glory of God. Was it easy? Oh, no, it was not. No matter if we are climbing the mountains, or able to touch those clouds with great blessings, or when our best friend is that cold, hard ground, above all, when we do our very best. And when, even though those best times sometimes end up being our worst times, we should be the one that is showing God's grace, love, forgiveness, joy, peace, self-control, as we might be the ones in the back of the mirror behind someone else that needs to be cheered on, loved, supported, or just cheering them when they do the good things. So next time you look in the mirror, you know that Jesus is there, but look to see who's behind you, and think about that family that's standing behind you.
Amen.
Or maybe you're the one in the background of the mirror, standing behind someone else. John 13:34 through 35, the New Living Translation. I think this is this. Oh, I did give it to her. Woo. So now I am giving you a new commandment: love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other, for your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Let's stand. Lord, you are an awesome God, and I don't always understand everything that happens in my life.